I'm so excited to be sat here today with Erin Evans. Now, I'm sure all of you already know who he is because of his fantastic training videos, but for the purpose of this interview, I'd love for you to start this interview by introducing yourself.
Sure. Well, my name's Erin Evans. I work for an organisation called FlowState, which I'm the co-founder of. And fundamentally, we work with organisations to give them extra capacity or extra expertise within their sales enablement function. I've spent the last 300, 400 years working in sales.
You don't look a day over 100.
What definitely feels like it. Working for large multinational corporates all the way through to small, nimble startups, helping organisations pre and post IPO, running big, large enablement functions. So yeah, very exciting to be here today with you and to talk about sales.
Well, I can't wait to pick your brains on all things practical questioning techniques. I think when you're working in tech sales, there's so many things that you need to learn to become that really takes you from being a mediocre sales professional to an elite sales professional. And I think the most important thing is having that great questioning techniques and asking those questions that really gets the right information out of the clients and the prospects that you're working with so you can build that trustworthy and incredible relationship. So let's start off with the big question, which is, why is the discovery stage so important and what is the main goal of it?
It's a great question. I think there's an important distinction to make, right? So there's the discovery stage, which is often part of a sales process, which is designed to extract the information, understand the customer's objectives, goals, pains, etc. But the mode of questioning is something that should happen throughout the whole sales process. But let's talk about the discovery stage more specifically. When we think about the objective of selling, we're constantly trying to offer someone a solution to a problem, right? They're trying to buy an outcome, to solve something, or maybe access an opportunity.
Yeah.
To sell them anything, you have to understand what it is you're trying to solve in the first place, right? So your product is this almost like a tool belt, right? And your objective is to take up the right tools to solve the right problem. Without understanding what the problem is, it's almost impossible to solve that. And where a lot of salespeople make mistakes is that they rush through the questioning stage, or they use the questioning stage or the discovery stage as a means to an end, right? To just get to show someone the product. But actually something really interesting happens in the discovery stage. So first of all, relationships are built and rapport is built because I'm listening to you, I'm understanding you, I'm showing that I care. And people love it when people care about their problem because they're going to care about the solution as well.
Yeah.
Second of all, it's really helpful for us, right? We're extracting valuable information that we can go and sell against, right? But lastly, it's what happens in the prospect's mind, right? You start getting them to talk about problems that they may have never actually thought about before in the past. You get them to start externalizing and vocalizing what the challenge is. You get them to start thinking about the implications of not solving the problem. You get them to start actually quantifying and substantiating that problem as well. So all of a sudden in the customer's mind, you start building urgency, you start building a need to act. And fundamentally in selling, what we're trying to do is we're trying to take someone from a state and move them into a future state, right? But show them that that future state is better, less riskier, and more compelling than what they're doing at the moment. So let me give you a really simple example. What colour's the sky, as an example?
On a good day, blue.
Okay. Is that all the time though?
No.
Okay, what colour is it at night?
Black.
Okay, so during the course of a year in England, what colour is the sky on average?
Blue.
Okay.
I had to think about that because sometimes I'd say grey, probably.
Interesting. So you've gone from telling me conclusively that the sky is blue to now telling me that it's grey.
Yeah.
I've not offered you an opinion. I've not told you what to think. I've just asked you a couple of leading questions that have got you to think in a different way. This is precisely what the discovery stage does. It gets the customers to think about a challenge, a problem, or a pocket of opportunity in a different way. And that's what's so key about it. It's not just about learning about the customer. It's about changing the customer's perception. One last thing I'll say on this, which I think is so critical, when you actually read the literature around this, you realise that buying takes place in the discovery stage, right? It doesn't take place when you show someone the solution. It takes place when they realise that there's a problem that needs solving.
Yeah.
We typically buy from people we trust, and there's no one we trust more than ourselves. So the objective of the salesperson is to create a dialogue with the prospect to talk to themselves. And that's what great discovery and great questioning can do.
I guess, like you say, you're answering your own pain points with that questioning process, and you're making the client or the prospect really think about, hold on, I didn't realize that I needed this. I didn't realize that I had this problem. So as you say, you've already done the close before you've even got to your solution.
They've emotionally purchased it. They realize they need to make a purchase through the questions.
Exactly. And I know we've spoken a lot on this before with like questioning and listening. And I think it's such an important aspect that you raise a lot in all of your training videos, that it's so important to actively listen. but also to be able to listen, you have to ask those smart questions, don't you? Because I think so many sales reps will think, oh, I've got to do all the talking. It's my pitch, it's my demo. I've got to be there and leading that conversation. But actually, what would you say is like the ratio between questioning and listening to actually you speaking?
I mean, it depends, right? Because you're using different questioning stages to elicit different things, right? So if we look at, as an example, like an early stage qualification, that's about making sure initially that there is a good fit between what we do and what the problem that we solve and what the customer needs. So when we do that, you can imagine there's a lot of qualifying questions, which are closed questions just to check that there's a fit. But the age-old rule, and I'm probably showing my age now, is that you've got 2 ears and 1 mouth. And it's good to use them in that ratio, right? So you don't want to be talking more than the client. You want to be speaking roughly between 1/3 and 1/2 of what the customer's saying. But it's not just about that, right? And this is what's really interesting, is that the listening is critical, but you're listening for a very direct purpose. You're listening to build a conversation with a customer and do what we call guided discovery, right? And conversational questioning techniques. If I'm listening to you, the next question that I ask needs to be in context of the information that you've given, because I'm trying to facilitate a conversation. So the advice that I always give salespeople is that when you're in a pub on a Friday night with your friend, it's a really easily natural flowing conversation. You're trying to recreate that exact environment with your prospect, but just maybe without the excessive amounts of alcohol, right? So,
although it always helps.
It always helps,
makes
exactly
it for a
right,
more
yeah.
interesting demo.
It does always help. So again, like I think people fixate sometimes on these numbers because there is so much data now that can trend what good looks like. But I think we've got to go back to the fundamental purpose of why we're doing this, right? Which is to very quickly show the client that there is a problem that needs solving, and fundamentally you are the right organization to solve that problem for them and create trust in that relationship so they feel like they can move forward with you.
Yeah, it's so interesting and important that you said that about having that conversation that flowed, because I think so many people think, I've got to ask all these questions, it's got to be very regimented, very structured. But like when we were planning this conversation earlier, we were saying, well, it is just a discussion. It's a conversation that free flows. And whatever you say, like if I had a set question that I was going to ask you next, that wouldn't be a natural conversation.
Exactly.
You don't have a crib sheet when you're speaking to your friends. But when you're speaking about structuring a conversation, how would you recommend, and from your expertise, what would that structure look like?
So the first thing I'd say is that one of the most critical things to do is let the customer know that you are going to ask them questions. Right? There's nothing more confronting than when you get on a call with someone and they're expecting to see a demonstration and you just start asking them loads of questions. The customer isn't prepared, and actually there's not a consistency of agenda of what you're both looking to achieve. So I'd start by saying that, just to let you know, my objective today is to try and understand what the organisation is trying to achieve, learn about the challenges, learn about the objectives that you've got, and ultimately by the end of this, if we can find exactly what it is you're trying to achieve, I want to show you how we can help you achieve that, right?
So there's no surprises.
Exactly
you know
right.
what the outcome will be.
Exactly right. And again, like what you're always trying to do is you're always trying to be meta to the situation. Just warn the customer what it is you're going to do, but also give the reason why you're doing it, right? Now, again, when we're looking at what we're actually trying to elicit from the discovery stage, depending on what qualification methodology you use, one of the ones I love the most is MEDDIC, right? Because it gives you 4 or 5 key pieces of criteria to understand what the customer is trying to achieve, the size of the problem, who's involved in making the decision, the implication of not solving the problem, which is obviously really, really critical, how they would go about making a decision if they were to solve the problem, what kind of budgets are in place to solve it, as an example. And also on top of that, like what exactly is it they're looking for from a provider that will solve that problem for them. So this is where we get the metrics, and the metrics are really key, right? So many opportunities fall down because we understand that there's a problem, but we haven't quantified the problem. So why is that important? Well, first of all, we're very rarely selling to the person who's going to make the final decision, or the economic buyer, as it's called in the MEDDIC format, right? Yeah. So it's important that they're armed with as much information as possible to go and sell this internally into the organisation and build a picture for change. Then you've got the E, which is the economic buyer, right? So we need to make sure that we are either speaking to or have contact with the person who can actually distribute the funds or sign the check. So when you consider, since the pandemic, obviously the amount of people involved in the decision now has increased, right? So they reckon there's up to 8 people involved in a decision. Wow. And on top of that, the CFO, who's the final sign-off in most cases, is getting more and more involved in smaller acquisitions of products or purchases, right? So understanding who the person is who's going to sign the check and distribute the funds is absolutely critical, right? Then you've got decision criteria and the decision process. So what are the boxes that need ticking? What is the laundry list of things this product needs to do to solve the problem? And it's really key that we elicit that from the customer, because there's a strong chance that we're selling against a competitor or an incumbent product as well. So not knowing that is really, really difficult. Then you've got decision process, which is if you were to purchase this, what exactly do you need to do as an organization? What steps do you need to make sure that you're doing all you can to purchase this internally, the right people involved, the process from a legal point of view, a technical point of view, from a contract point of view. We need to get that information as well. Right. Then we've got the I, which is identifying the pain, the problem, or the business initiative, right? This is where it all starts. If you don't know what the problem is you're solving, you don't know what the objective is the customer's trying to achieve, what are you selling, right? And that's the key thing. And then lastly, we've got champion as well, right? Or champions, as I like to say, because it's really critical now that you've got multiple people, you're building buying committees who can go into the business and be agents for that change as well. Now, there's a whole sort of plethora of detail and lots of questions that are involved in that framework. But fundamentally, if you're grabbing that key information, it's going to put you in a good position to not just understand where the deal is, but also help the customer buy in that process as well.
It's all about building that trust, isn't it? Especially with those champions and making sure that you're being really authentic with what you're selling. And I think having that core structure is so important. So you know, okay, this is what the buying process and the sales process will look like. And these are the attributes and the things I need to take off my list. But do you ever think that there's a risk of over preparation? Because especially with more junior reps, I think they tend to, I mean, this might be an assumption, but I know that people use crib sheets and they want to really, really plan their questions to the nth degree to make sure that they go into that pitch or that demo or that first call really prepared with all the questions that won't get out. But then does that start to lose that human element where you're not having that discussion like we spoke about earlier, where you're not reacting, and how do we make that balance where we feel prepared but not taking out that human element? It's
such a good question, and it's sort of for me one of the biggest things that's affecting our industry at the moment is that there are a series of core skills that have been around in sales for a very, very long time. And because of technology and because of some practices and also because of sometimes managers being just way too busy doing stuff that isn't core to the role, the reps aren't being coached around the right things. And one of those things for me is in the moment questioning skills. So as you well say, and I think you've raised a great point here, is that sometimes we write a list of questions that we need to ask the customer and information that we need to get. Customer doesn't give a shit about that, just to be really honest with you, right? They want to know what it is you can do to help them, and obviously you to guide them on that journey to do that. By creating a list of questions, we never take the stabilizers off the rep. So what then happens is we create really awkward, uncomfortable conversations that are lacking the sort of nimble attributes, but also the kind of to and fro of a regular conversation. And then what this then does is the customer starts feeling like a number that you're just basically running them through a questionnaire, and you don't really care about them or their pain. The thing that we should be coaching hard in reps is how to listen, because that's what's guiding your next question, is the information and the curiosity that you're getting from a piece of information the customer's given you, and then how you question around that. Now, my worry is that if we give someone a list of questions, we're going to remove that curiosity and we're going to remove that in-the-moment skill of being able to question around the client's information. We call it contextual questioning, right? It's in context of the last thing that you said. It's the equivalent of me saying to you, like, what's your name? And what's the capital city of Chile? And what's your mum's maiden name?
Just so random.
It just feels really uncomfortable. And at the end of it, you just think to yourself, this person doesn't really care. All they want is to get me through their sales funnel, and that's all they want. And that's a really, really, really bad effect we're leaving on the customer.
And Erin, since this channel is all around the unfiltered side of sales and being really real with the failures and the challenges that many reps face every single day, it's not always all sun and roses. There are things that people struggle with and the challenges that they face, but it's how we overcome that and be resilient. So I've asked every guest to come with a challenge or a failure, although I hate the word failure because I think you can always learn things from failures and it's how you use that to better yourself in your career. But what is the one pinnacle moment in your career that's really helped shape you to where you are today?
It's a really good question. And, you know, so much of what I do is about learning and about coaching and about developing. And it was a real lesson that I went through in terms of how I learn and how I'm coached and how I develop. And it's really actually quite consistent with questioning, is that there's a really famous model called the Dunning-Kruger effect, which is basically the longer you understand a subject, the more you realise you don't know. And it all starts with when you first encounter the subject, you think that you're an expert because you've got a little piece of information. And they call this the peak of Mount Stupid. So when I first started in selling, I made my first few sales, and I felt like I'd basically invented sales, and I thought I was the master of selling and no one would ever be better than me. And then, you know, after a couple of months and a few dry pipelines and a few zeros, you crash right down. And they call this the valley of despair, which is you go right down because you realise you actually know so little. And this should be really enlightening. We should be turning around and saying, look, there's a subject that I'm deeply interested in, which is my career that I've chosen. But the good news is I know absolutely nothing about it. And then you start this wonderful journey of learning more about it and realizing that not only have you learnt more, but there's a ton more to learn. So for me, this was a really sobering experience of thinking that I was so good at something and then realizing that actually I know absolutely nothing. And being liberated by that and being encouraged and enthused by that, it's actually really, really good. So it's important to remember that we're all on this journey of enlightenment. And just because you don't know something, we should be excited by that and we should try and learn more.
That is such a brilliant message to end on. And there is always so much more to learn. And you are such a brilliant example of that with all of the videos that you've got on your own channel. So if you have enjoyed anything that you've heard today, then please do connect with Erin and head over to your YouTube channel because you've got some brilliant advice on there. Thank you so much for joining me there. I've really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too.
And
thank you for having me.
definitely want to do it again soon.
Awesome. Thank you.